Okay, hello Facebook world. So I wanted to do a quick little video, and I say quick, knowing me, to just a little bit of a brief kind of an intro to something I'm talking about on my purpose series. So I'm doing a series of live calls. Basically, I'm doing 3 of them. Today's the first one. There will be time to sign up, so I'll put the link after when people hop onto this too. So hi Carla, so people can you can join me because there's going to be 3 different calls on this, and it's going throughout the month. But I just wanted to kind of prelude a little bit of one of the things that I'm talking about. So if people, hi Ernie, people kind of want to get into this a little bit more, you can join me on those calls. But I wanted to create a series to talk about basically the quest to living our purpose, because I think that, you know, the pursuit of purpose, the embodiment of it, the living of it, is, I think, an essential and really important journey for us to go on and to really claim in our lifetime. And I know that there's things that kind of pop up for us that prevent us from doing so, right? And so what I'm talking about in the first call is sabotage and fear, because I think that the biggest killers of you know, the pursuit of our purpose or our dreams or the things that we want to create in our life are the things that we hold within ourselves, right? So our fears and our sabotage. I think the thing of it is too, is there's often where we're not even conscious of the places that we're sabotaging ourselves, because it's, you know, I think it's hard for us to have that discernment of what voice we're listening to and where that comes from. And I think that knowing what our places of sabotage are is really important, because then we know how to hold space for it, and then we don't have to get stuck all the time. But if we're not moving forward, if we're not progressing, you know, if we're stagnating, and I think, again, it gets a little bit tricky sometimes of like where we sabotage, right? So I wanted to kind of give an example of that for myself, and then again, if you're kind of watching this live stream and you want to go a little bit deeper for me, you can join me on the Purpose series as well. But there's, you know, I think that one of the things that I was sharing about today and was sort of percolating for me is this place of worthiness. And I think this whole thing about self-worth. And I know, like, there's these pieces of, I don't know if I would call them core wounds or insecurities. I think our sabotage shows up around the places that we, you know, are holding kind of this false belief system about ourselves. And I think one of the ones that I've always noticed that kind of shows up for me in the underbelly of my experiences, and I'll kind of give examples of where that shows up, is that I'm somehow unworthy of you know, having a life that is really reflective of something that I really desire, that speaks really purposely, or I'm not, or I have to sort of prove my deservedness to that, right? And so where that sort of starts to show up as sabotage, you know, I think before, this is what I see a lot for people. Before we even, say we have a doorway open to us to possibility, or we have a dream for ourselves, before we even walk through that door, we'll often slam it in our face, you know, because we have these thoughts of, you know, I'm not ready, or I'm not enough, or, you know, all of those places that happen. And I don't always think we're always conscious of that's happening. I know for myself that there's sort of this place of self-sabotage happening when I'm not really allowing myself to hold the bigness of my life. And you know, here's I'll give you a sort of a couple of things of you know, how that's manifested for me. I went to school to be a horse breeder, and so there was a portion of my life where I would clean stalls, and I remember sort of being in the stable at one point, kind of thinking to myself, I think my life is meant for more than this. But there was also sort of this funny place of not really believing or thinking that, you know, there was a little place of self-worth, but that I could even begin to articulate or to dream about something bigger than what I was doing. I've been a nanny, I've been a dog walker, and I remember sort of having these moments where it's like, I think I'm meant for more than this, but I'm really terrified to even start to entertain what that might be. And I think a lot of the times, when I'm working with people, I see that it's like we don't even want to go there. It's like we don't even want to sort of push those edges of really opening and exploring what could be the full possibility of what I could do with my life and with my purpose, because it scares us. And so where we sabotage is we don't even go there. We don't even vision, we don't even dream, we don't even open the doorway. And I know that where I've bumped up on some of these places, and I can remember in particular, another example of this was my first retreat space I leased, when I sort of had that thing of like, I want to sort of see if I can really build a business around my calling with horses and to really kind of go for it. And sort of that was sort of my first entry into like, let me just explore if this is even a possibility, if I can even do this. And so I found a facility to lease and I went for it. What started to happen is I started to struggle in my business in a lot of ways, right? So it was really hard for me. I wasn't really getting clients. I wasn't really working with the people that I wanted to work. I was going into debt and all of these pieces. And I think part of again, what was really uncomfortable for me is I couldn't really fathom what it would really look like to be successful in my purpose. So it was one step to even just let myself entertain that maybe I can build something around this calling. The next edge for me was, what if I was successful in it? And I think this place of asking ourselves this possibility of what if this was possible is where often we'll sabotage. And again, I think that where we don't know that we're sabotaging is I think we don't even go there. We don't even entertain the possibility. I think we sort of settle for the things that we're living. So maybe it's a career that doesn't completely fulfill you. Or, maybe there's these visions or these big dreams that are sort of there, but you're not even pursuing them or nurturing them because you think maybe they're too big. I was told a lot, I have to be realistic, or, pay my dues. And so there's those things that we get told along the way that sort of stop us from even opening the doorway and even sort of expressing the possibility. I think one of the first places of sort of making our dreams a reality or our purpose a reality is opening the door to it. And again, I think a lot of the times we are unconscious as to where we don't allow ourselves to do that. Where that's manifested for me, it's not even like, not stepping fully into my purpose or not stepping fully into, building the success of my business around my purpose. So there's different layers. And then, I sort of had this mantra that I gave to myself in 2014 because I was sort of looking at this possibility of losing everything because I was struggling a lot in my business. And it was sort of like, I either figure this shit out and, what's not working for me. And I'll tell you something, and this is sort of the heart of what I'm talking about here. It wasn't that I had to learn to become more strategic or I had to learn how to sell my services better. It was actually the biggest sort of journey for me was actually allowing myself to step into the place internally that this is possible for me and I can do this. And that's where I was sort of sabotaging myself. So I think sometimes we think it's like these external things and stuff for us to do, and oftentimes it's the internal piece that is really blocking us. And so I think that's sort of important to understand the psychology behind the belief systems that we're holding, what we're staying stuck in, and how do we shift that? And so the shift for me really happened where 6 months after I sort of had this like come to Jesus moment, even though I'm not like super religious, was like that I have to change something. And the big shift for me was, what if I really claimed that my, quote unquote destiny was to succeed in what I was creating in the world, and really kind of held that internally. 6 months later, this 80-acre ranch showed up, that was, if you can imagine, just a very sort of big purchase. And I don't think that if I hadn't sort of opened that door for myself, that would have been even something that could have come into my experience at all. I was 32 years old. I didn't think at that point in my life that something like that would be possible. So I'm a huge believer, I think, when it comes to purpose and it comes to our dreams and our visions that we have for our life, that we don't even understand and can comprehend the fullness of what that could be. And even for me, who I live that way, and I've accomplished that to a certain degree, and there's still more. And like here's the confession, I think, for this too. Once I got to this ranch, it was sort of like, now what do I do? And this is what I'm going to be talking about on the series today for people. So I'm kind of preluding a little bit of what I'm talking about. I created this series of conversation to really go into a little bit of my journey and how we pursue our purpose and what that looks like. But there was sort of this place for me where that unlocking of where I sabotage and where I hold myself, hi Jackie, has been really profound for me in terms of opening up for these opportunities to come in. And the ranch, obviously, in my dream of having a facility like this where I live my purpose and I have people come and I'm doing the work with the horses, has been something I've wanted. But I think that there was also a place where I didn't actually believe potentially that could happen, or again, I was worthy of it. And so those are the things that I've had to move through to get to a place where I'm available for it and it starts to manifest in my life. So I really believe that the manifestation and realization of our root and path to purpose comes from knowing what we're holding within ourselves around that vision, and understanding that what we feel and what we're carrying in relationship to that has a really, really big impact on whether or not we succeed, or that there even is possibility that starts to show up for us. So I know that anytime I see that things are like stopping, so there's like a lack of flow maybe of clients or opportunities of my work, that there's some place in me that is sort of, I'm reverting back to that place of sabotage, or I'm afraid, or I'm closing doors on myself because of something that I believe to be true. And so knowing that that's a part of the process, when I see that sort of, okay, there we go. You're welcome, Francine. So, here's the thing that's really important. And this is why I sort of talk about this, because I think sometimes we don't understand that this internal experience of ourselves has a huge impact on what's happening in our outer world. And sometimes we look to fix, like, what am I doing wrong out there? And it's like, probably you're not doing much wrong out there. It's that something is being held incongruently within yourself. And so when we have an awareness of what that is, and we can sort of drop into that curiosity of that, and then we can shift it, things shift. So I know when, again, things are stagnating or stuck, it's like something's happening in my internal psyche that I'm creating a block or a stop flow in my energy for things to not come. And again, in terms of like taking action, and creating different things, if we're feeling lack of belief of self, or lack of self-worth, or whatever it is, and that's our predominant experience of ourselves internally, we're not going to be able to take the action that we want to get the outcome that we want, right? So it doesn't matter how much action you take, and it doesn't matter how much strategy you have. Not that those things are not integral to the process, because they are. But if you don't look at how you're operating internally and what's happening within you, that stuff isn't going to mean anything. And I think that's when we get frustrated and things feel really hard. And so when I notice that some of these things are happening in my life, one of the first things I go to is just to kind of sit with myself and say, what's happening in me? And what's the belief system that I'm operating right now? And is it serving the progression of where I want to go, or is it stopping me? And it's almost like sometimes I see like the visualization of this, or the metaphor. It's like that, there's a doorway that's in front of us and it's unlocked and it's ready to be opened. And we are the ones that are holding the door shut. So you can imagine that if we're holding the door shut on ourselves, right? And we're not opening it up and allowing anything to come through or to experience anything, that it's really going to be hard for things to manifest in our world, because we're shutting the door. And I think that that's what self-sabotage is. It's like we're holding the door shut on ourselves. And so we want to kind of figure out, like, what is that? I think that there are kind of core places of sabotage that are very common for a lot of people, right? So like things for me that pop up, and I notice this sometimes, like say I'm sort of on this edge of like, a breakthrough, or like there's an edge that I really need to push through in terms of continuing to support my success or expand it, you know, in my purpose in the world. And it's conjuring up. Here's the connection. When I'm knee deep in my self-sabotage and saboteurs, I know that it's because there's a doorway opening for me. And that's the process. And so my process with it is to sort of know, okay, this is what's happening. What is this? And I think again, there's like, I'm trying to think, for me, worthiness is a big thing. So I have this, like, I know this, what happens for me. And this is what happened to me when I had the ranch. I got the ranch, and I sort of had this thing where it's like, there's a belief system that I have that you can only have so much good in your life. And it's like, how blessed am I that I have this beautiful ranch and I'm living my purpose. It's like, I'm not allowed to have more than this. Or I really have to prove my worthiness of this, you know, that I can have sort of the full expression of my success in the world. And so because I feel vulnerable around that, and I think, again, the worthiness piece is we all have ways that I think the self-worth piece shows up for us. That's sort of that's how it shows up for me. But because I'm uncomfortable with it, then I start to sabotage, right? And the sabotage can show up as stagnation, because it's like, if I don't believe that I can have this good, and I don't believe that my purpose can be successful because I'm not worthy of it, or there's only so much that I can have, then what happens is I'm internally, you know, that's what I'm kind of dictating to the universe, and that's how I'm operating. So knowing that, it's like I can kind of spend time with, okay, I see I'm sabotaging myself again. What is this about? I think what's really important about this conversation is I think there's a lot of times where a lot of us, we don't even challenge our belief system. We sort of have these belief systems that we've adopted or we've taken on from life or from other people, what we heard, and we sort of like go along with it. And we don't challenge it, and we don't question it. And one of the things that became a really powerful mantra for me when I was, you know, kind of breaking away from my old patterning of, you know, keeping myself small or settling for things that were not what I really wanted, was to tell myself that just because I think it doesn't mean it's true. And so when I noticed myself having these thoughts of fear or guilt or, you know, shame of having success even, or I'm not worthy of this, or like I don't know how to be with, you know, this is the thing that I think what's really interesting. A lot of us think we feel failure. I notice for myself, I have a tremendous fear of success. And there's almost like there's a part of me that I don't even know what to do with that. I don't even know how to be with that. And so because there's a part of me that I don't think I can stand that much good in my life, or I don't think I can stand that much fortune, or I don't think I can stand that much, which I think our purpose gives us. I really think that, you know, following our bliss and following our purpose, you know, the abundance that comes from that, I think, is massive, you know, in terms of that service. And like, I'm hugely uncomfortable with that, hugely. And so that's one that often shows up for me every level that I go, you know, and the thing that I think sometimes what even happened when I also got to this place of, okay, I realized the dream. I have the ranch, I have the farm. Now what do I do? It was like I was lost, because I didn't even know what was next and what was beyond that. Like, it's like I couldn't even go bigger than this. I couldn't fathom that. And again, that's, I think, where we sabotage. I think that we keep ourselves small. I believe we each have our version of bigness in the world. And it manifests differently for all of us, right? It's not like everybody wants to be an international speaker or to reach millions or whatever. We all have our version of what that is. But I think that for the most part, we don't even allow ourselves to entertain that. And so I know what's been part of my practice since even coming to the ranch was I had to sort of go through this journey again, because I flatlined after I got here, and the same stuff came up. And again, I sabotaged myself all over the place. Now, I've been able to recognize that I'm doing that. And sometimes it's slower, you know, and this is where I think this is important to talk about. I sometimes am blind to where I'm doing it too. But there was sort of this nudge that was saying, there's more for you, and there's more that you're meant for. And I think that, you know, we have a responsibility with our purpose to really step into what that is. And so I need to look at those pieces that are really keeping me from that. And so one of the things that feels tender or vulnerable for me is like, how do I get to the place to be with that life can be that for me, and I can have success, and because that feels very foreign to us. I think there's a place too that it's like we feel guilty about that, or we feel shame, or we make up stories about what success means, that it takes away from other people, or it makes us unrelatable. Like there's all of the things that I have, like, how do I help people when like I'm doing so good? And I don't want to take away from anybody, or that we have to like experience pain and struggle all the time to have something to talk about or relate to with people, right? So there's this thing of like, it's the uncomfortable. There's also this thing, I think, for me, of just where there is a worthiness piece of, I don't think I'm worthy of having that much good in my life, where I think this purpose piece can really hold a deep fulfillment across the board, but I don't think I'm worthy of that. So if we have this internal thing of like, I'm unworthy, that's going to show up all over the place. And so I think it's important to sort of have this awareness of, what are these core pieces I'm traveling with? When do I know they're showing up? And how do I shift that? So that we can sort of be open to the realization of our purpose and our dreams. And I'll share something that has been very impactful for me. And this is a reminder too. And then I'm going to kind of pause here because I'm wanting to leave some good stuff for the call I'm doing today. I have with my purpose, as part of that, a couple of different levels, not also just like with the people I'm impacting and working with, but also my horses. And what's been incredibly impactful for me is being able to be at a place. Somebody just put an angry face. You get angry. Where I can see the impact of me allowing myself to reach bigger and to expand my own vision of what I think my purpose is. I've been able to give more homes to horses. I have 25 horses on my property. My original herd, when I was leasing my property, I had 5. So I've had to transition 4, and so there's been 29 horses that have had the impact of me expanding my vision of purpose. And the more that I continue to do that, the more impact I have. In regards to people, I remember when I first kind of stepped into, okay, I'm going to go for it, and I'm going to, lease this property, and I'm going to go big with this thing with horses. I had people messaging me saying, thank you so much for doing that. And the impact it has had on other people by me having the courage. So, where I had this fear, like it's going to take away from other, or people are going to be mad at me for it, or I need to feel ashamed about it. The opposite happened. It was like people were very inspired. People are inspired by my journey, so much so that it gave them the courage to do something too. Same with my clients. When I work with people to help them in this place, and they're able to change their life and go for this purpose and the things that they're doing, then they get to have an impact too. And it's been a really special thing to also have at my physical spaces, both with the retreat and the old place, where people are coming and they're telling me how special it is and what the impact it has. So I've been able to really get it, that there's an impact. And I think sometimes when we're in this journey, we're so self-absorbed in it, and we make it about ourselves, and we make it about, this fear of how the impact is on us, that we forget that there's a bigger ripple effect that's happening out there. And, I think that the ripple effect is both personal. There is a personal fulfillment in that. I'm personally fulfilled when I'm living my purpose, because it feeds my soul, right? There's an expression that I'm giving myself that, I think it's an incredible thing to embody. And it also has an impact out there. And so if we can get beyond where we sabotage, and we can allow ourselves to really open up to the possibility of our purpose and to live it, because I think that's what we're here to do, it's profound, what the results are. I think that the self-sabotage place and the fear is the biggest thing that stops us from doing that. it's huge. And so if we can learn how to navigate and be in a different relationship, or even have an awareness that we do these things, it shifts everything. It doesn't go away, but like for me, it's like I understand how to be in a relationship with my sabotage, so it doesn't prevent me from creating or growing or expanding or stepping into the realization of what I'm creating. So I think that core piece is really important. So I'm going to stop there. For people that you want to go a little bit deeper with me, like I said, I'm starting a series of conversations called the Purpose Series, and basically it's free, by the way, so it's free to join me, and it's going to be recorded. So it's free to sign up. You don't have to make it live because it's going to be recorded. But if you want to know more, basically what I'm going to be sharing today, so the first call's today at noon, is a little bit more intimately of like the things that I know I sort of share a lot transparently in these anyways, but like the things that I've moved through, and then how do we process and how do we move through our sabotage. So it's, I think, a combination of just sharing my own journey and then also giving you guys some really good tools. So today we're talking about purpose. How do we know our purpose? So how do we discover what our purpose is? And then how do we identify the core pieces of sabotage that stop us from really pursuing it? So that's today. And then the other two calls on it, the second one is going to be about visioning and how do we kind of cultivate that vision for our purpose and for our life and for the things that we feel we're meant to do. And then the third one is going to be talking a little bit about the leadership pieces, just in terms of how we master ourselves and sort of that journey. So if you want to join me for that, again, it's totally free to sign up. I will put the link here. Even if you watch the replay late and you're late signing up, you will still get the recording, so that you can come and join me for these calls, because I think it'll be really good. And then you can keep it and you can have it with you. My hope always when I do these things is that it kind of gives you a lot of, kind of empowers and inspires sort of where you're at. So if you're at any place where it's like, I want to know my purpose, or maybe I'm living it and I want to be doing it more deeply, or like I feel like I'm holding back on some area or I'm settling, then come join me, because I have a thing or two to say about that. So that's it. Okay, so I'll put in the link too. On a side mark, if you're just listening to this stuff, a large piece of what I do in my work with people is really in this conversation of supporting other women, and also there's some men that I work with as well, of like really stepping into the full claiming of what your purpose is and creating around that. So whether that's a business or something else, and really the journey that we go through internally to make that happen. But basically, a lot of the people that I work with have sort of been in this place of, I've been wanting to go for the thing that I feel like I'm here to do, but I haven't been able to, and I help them get there and to be doing it. So that's the kind of the short version of that. You can check out my stuff at hillaryschneider.com. Okay, so if you're curious about that. Otherwise, I hope to see maybe some of you guys on the call at noon. Okay, awesome. And I just got this really lovely message from Francine. Okay, that's great. Isn't that awesome where you get affirmation? Noreen, you'll have to watch the replay. And then I'll pop in the, I'm going to pop in the link to join me on these calls. Again, it's free. You do get kind of access to my list. You don't have to stay on my list. I write really good stuff, I think. Most people love my stuff. It's not spammy, I promise. So you can sign up with the webinars there. And then you get a recording if you can't make it live. So if you can't come live, totally cool. If you're watching the replay on it, you can sign up anyways, because then you can get the recording and then you have it. All right. You're welcome, Francine and everybody. And then, feel free to share. If you feel like somebody would benefit from that, feel free to share. All right. We'll see you later, guys.